At the bank, the teller whispered to me, "Your son tried to close your account." I just smiled and opened another one with 3 million more. My world collapsed in that whisper. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It'll help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Helen Miller, I'm 73 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed my life had been worthwhile. I lived in a 2-story brownstone in Beacon Hill, in Boston, the same house where I raised David, my only son, where I cooked thousands of Sunday pot roasts, and where every corner held the echo of laughter that now sounds like destiny's mockery. It was Tuesday, October 23rd. I remember the date because that day my world changed forever. I had gone to the Bank of America on Newbury Street, the same one where I'd had my account for 30 years. It was my usual routine: withdraw $300 for the week's expenses, shop at the Haymarket, and then stop by the pharmacy for my heart medication. The bank branch smelled of fresh coffee and that sweet perfume young women wear. The fluorescent lights hummed softly over the heads of the customers waiting in the blue plastic chairs. I was wearing my gray coat, the same one David had given me 3 Christmases ago, back when he still looked at me with something resembling affection. My black low-heeled shoes echoed against the marble floor as I walked to the counter. Ashley, the teller, a young woman from Georgia in her 30s with her hair in a perfect bun, greeted me with that professional smile I'd learned to distinguish from the genuine ones. But something in her eyes alerted me. There was a tension, a worry that wasn't normal. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller," she said with her soft southern accent. "How are you?" "I'm well, dear, thank you. I'm just here for my usual withdrawal." She glanced to both sides, as if making sure no one was listening, and then leaned forward. Her voice became a whisper that chilled me to the bone. "Mrs. Miller, your son came in yesterday. He tried to close your account." The world stopped. The whirring of the bill-counting machines, the conversations of other customers, the constant murmur of the bank, it all disappeared. Only that whisper remained, echoing in my ears like an infinite sound. "I'm sorry?" I murmured, gripping the marble counter because I felt my legs start to tremble. Ashley lowered her voice even more, looking nervously towards the manager's office. "He said you were sick, that you'd lost your memory, and he had a power of attorney to manage your accounts. He brought documents, but something seemed off." My heart started beating so loudly I thought everyone in the bank could hear it. David. My David. The same little boy who used to hide behind my skirt when he was scared, who drew me hearts on Mother's Day cards, who promised that when he grew up, he'd buy me a house by the sea. What kind of documents?" I managed to ask. "A letter from a doctor saying you were suffering from senile dementia and a power of attorney. But the notary who signed it, when we called to verify, he told us he'd never seen those papers." The words hit me like stones. Senile dementia. My son had claimed I had senile dementia. That I had lost my mind. That I was no longer capable of managing my own life. Ashley continued, her voice filled with a compassion that broke my soul. "That's why we didn't give him access, ma'am. But he was very insistent. He said he'd be back with more documents." I stood there, clutching my brown leather purse to my chest, feeling every certainty in my life crumble like a house of cards. Images of David as a child flashed through my mind, his first steps in the hallway, his cries in my arms when he had nightmares, the nights I spent awake watching over him when he had a fever. I remembered selling my jewelry to pay for his business administration degree, how I worked double shifts cleaning offices so he could have new clothes for job interviews. I remembered when he married Jessica and I gave him my life savings for the down payment on their condo in Back Bay. "Mrs. Miller, are you all right?" Ashley asked, getting up from her chair. "Can I get you a glass of water?" I shook my head, though my throat was as dry as sandpaper. I couldn't show weakness. Not there. Not in front of strangers. "I'm fine, dear. Just surprised." But I wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. In that moment, I understood that my son, my only family, the center of my universe for 73 years, had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. He didn't just want to steal my money, he wanted to have me declared insane. He wanted the world to believe I was useless. I left the bank and walked through the streets of Boston like a ghost. It was October, the leaves on the trees were beginning to change color, and the cold air cut my face like tiny blades. I passed the bakery where I bought my daily bread, the newsstand where old Mr. Henderson always saved me the crossword puzzle magazine, the pharmacy where Mrs. Chen would ask about my blood pressure. Everything seemed the same, but I had changed forever. I got to my house, climbed the 18 steps to my front door, and sat in my favorite armchair, the green velvet one that had been my mother's. The silence of the house felt different now, heavier, more threatening. It was the silence of betrayal, of the deepest loneliness that exists, discovering that the one you love most is the one who hurts you the most. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in decades, I allowed myself to cry. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling and remembering every sacrifice I had made for David. Every burden I had shouldered alone so he could have a better life than I did. I remembered when his father, Michael, died of a heart attack when David was just 17. It was in the middle of a sweltering Boston summer in '98. Michael collapsed at the construction site where he worked, and I was left alone with a rebellious teenager and debts that seemed like insurmountable mountains. I sold everything of value: my grandmother's engagement ring, the gold earrings Michael had given me on our first anniversary, even the silver cutlery that had been my parents' wedding gift. Also, David could graduate from high school and not have to start working at 14 like I had. I got out of bed at 3 in the morning and went to my old closet. In the back, behind the winter blankets, I kept a shoebox. Inside were all the letters David had written to me when he went off to college in California. I had reread them so many times I knew every word by heart. "Dearest Mom," one of them said, "thank you for everything you do for me. I know you skip dinner to send me money. When I graduate, I'm going to pay you back for every dollar and buy you the most beautiful house in America. I love you more than life itself." Those words, in his slanted handwriting, now burned my eyes. At what point had my little boy turned into this man capable of declaring me mentally incompetent to rob me? The next day, I decided to go see him. I needed to look him in the eye and ask him directly. His office was in the financial district, in a modern glass and steel building where he worked as a financial advisor. Ironic, I thought as I went up in the elevator. My son managed other people's money but wanted to steal from his own mother. The receptionist, a young woman with too much makeup, looked me up and down when I said I was there to see David Miller. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked with a dismissive tone. "I'm his mother." Her expression changed immediately, as if she had just remembered that David had mentioned having a crazy mother. "Oh, right, he mentioned that." She stopped, biting her lip. "One moment, I'll let him know you're here." I waited in a room with white leather armchairs and business magazines I didn't understand. The walls were decorated with abstract paintings that probably cost more than my entire year's pension. Everything was cold, impersonal, like my son's heart. David appeared after 20 minutes. He was wearing an expensive navy blue suit and a tie I recognized because I'd given it to him for his birthday. He looked nervous, avoiding my gaze. "Mom, what are you doing here? I told you not to come to my work. I need to talk to you. It's not a good time. I have an important meeting in 5 minutes." "David, did you go to the bank yesterday?" He turned pale. His eyes, the same eyes that would fill with tears as a child when I denied him a treat, now looked at me with something resembling fear. "I don't know what you're talking about. You went to my bank. You said I was crazy. That I had dementia." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had since he was a boy when he knew he'd done something wrong. "Mom, please, don't make a scene here. People are watching." I looked around. Sure enough, several employees had peeked their heads out of their cubicles, curious about the drama unfolding in the elegant reception area. "A scene? Is that what you call asking your son why he wants to rob me?" "I don't want to rob you," he whispered furiously. "I just want to protect you. You're not at an age to be handling so much money anymore. You could get scammed, you could be taken advantage of, like you're doing." David took a deep breath, and for a moment, I thought I saw the boy he had once been. But then his expression hardened. "Mom, Jessica and I have been talking. We think it's best if you come live with us. We'll sell your house, put the money into an account that I'll manage, and you'll be taken care of. You won't have to worry about a thing anymore." His words hit me like slaps. He didn't just want my money, he wanted my house too. The house where I had raised my son, where I had mourned my husband's death, where every corner held a memory. "And what if I don't want to?" "Mom, you don't have a choice. At your age, these things are decided as a family." "As a family?" I laughed bitterly. Where was this family when I had pneumonia last year and went 3 days without a single call? Where was it when I turned 70 and spent the day alone because you two went on a trip to Paris? David looked at his watch impatiently. "Mom, I really have to go. We'll talk at home on Sunday. Jessica will make lasagna. I won't be there." "What do you mean you won't be there?" "I'm not setting foot in your house again until you apologize to me." He came closer, and for the first time in years, he touched me. He put his hands on my shoulders, but it wasn't a gesture of affection. It was a warning. "Mom, don't be stubborn. This is for your own good." I shrugged off his hands and walked towards the exit. Before reaching the door, I turned back. "David, when you were 8 and you lost your dog, Rex, you cried every night. I held you for 2 weeks until the pain went away. Now I understand that you're the one who's lost." I walked out of his office with my head held high, but inside I was falling apart. On the subway back home, sitting among strangers absorbed in their phones, I allowed myself to cry in silence. The tears fell on my gray coat as the stations blurred past the window. That night, alone in my kitchen, I made dinner for the first time in weeks. I always used to cook extra, just in case David showed up unexpectedly like he used to. But he wouldn't be coming anymore. Maybe never again. As I was heating up a can of vegetable soup, the phone rang. It was Jessica. "Helen, David told me you went to his office to make a scene." Her voice was cold, calculating. "It wasn't a scene, Jessica. It was a conversation between a mother and her son. Look, Helen, let's be clear. David is a successful man with a reputation to protect. He can't have a mother who causes drama at his workplace." "Drama?" "Yes, drama. And about the bank, well, it's for your own good. At your age, it's normal to be forgetful." My soup grew cold as I listened to the woman for whom I had lost my son. "Jessica, did you sign those fake documents?" There was a long silence. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. Helen, I'm going to give you some advice, accept David's help. It's for the best." She hung up without saying goodbye. I stood with the phone in my hand, looking at my reflection in the kitchen window. I saw an old, tired woman, betrayed by the two people I trusted most. But I also saw something else. I saw a woman who still had her dignity. And that night, I made the decision that would change everything. The decision I made that night was to call Mr. Julian Herrera, the lawyer who had handled Michael's affairs when he died. He was 82 and retired, but he had been like a father to me during the hardest years of my life. The next day, at 9 in the morning, I was sitting in his office on State Street. The place smelled of old books and strong coffee. Mr. Herrera greeted me with the same warm hug as always, but when I told him what had happened, his face hardened. "Helen, what you're telling me is a crime. Forgery, attempted fraud, your son could go to jail." "I don't want to send him to jail, Julian. I just want to protect myself." "How much money do you have, exactly?" I showed him my bank statements. His eyebrows shot up when he saw the numbers. "Helen, you have almost $3 million. Where did all this money come from?" I explained everything: the inheritance from my parents, the plot of land in western Massachusetts I had sold secretly the year before, the life savings from working in the laundry at Massachusetts General Hospital, the small investments I had made following the advice of a neighbor who knew about the stock market. I never told David the exact amount. He just knew I had savings, but he thought it was much less. Mr. Herrera took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly, the way he did when he was thinking about something important. "Helen, the first thing we're going to do is open accounts at other banks. Different institutions, different branches. And we're going to change your will." "My will?" "Yes. Because if something happens to you, I want to make sure your money goes where you really want it to go." We spent the whole morning organizing my finances. I opened an account at Chase in the Back Bay, another at Wells Fargo on Boylston Street, and a third at Citibank in the South End. I divided the money among the three. We also did something I never thought I would do: we drafted a will where David would only inherit $50,000. The rest would go to charity. "Are you sure about this, Helen?" "Completely sure." I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in months: control. For the first time in a long time, I was the one in power. But my peace was short-lived. On Sunday morning, David showed up at my house unannounced. He had keys because I'd given them to him years ago for emergencies. I heard him come in from my bedroom, his heavy footsteps climbing the stairs. "Mom, where are you?" I came out in my robe and found him in the kitchen, going through my papers on the table. "What are you doing?" "Mom, we need to talk. Seriously. Jessica and I have made a decision." He looked different. More desperate. He had dark circles under his eyes and his suit was wrinkled as if he had slept in it. "What decision?" "You're coming to live with us. Today." "I already told you no." "Mom, it's not a suggestion. It's an order." I stared at him. Who was this man speaking to me as if I were a disobedient child? "An order? You're giving me orders?" David took a deep breath and pulled out his phone. "Look at this." On the screen was a picture of me leaving Mr. Herrera's office. "Are you following me? I'm looking out for you. And I know you went to see a lawyer yesterday." "What for, Mom? What are you planning?" A chill ran down my spine. My own son was spying on me as if I were a criminal. "That's none of your business." "Of course it's my business. I'm your son. I have a right to know what you're doing with your money." The way he said "your money" revealed everything. In his mind, it was already his. "David, I want you to leave my house." "I'm not leaving. Not until you sign the papers." He took the same documents from his briefcase that he had tried to use at the bank. "I fixed them. They're properly legalized now." The papers had my name, my forged signature, and a seal that looked official. "How did you get this?" "I have connections, Mom. People who understand that sometimes you have to protect parents from themselves." I sat in my kitchen chair, the same one where I'd had breakfast for 30 years. My head was spinning. "David, tell me the truth. Why do you need my money?" For the first time, his mask fell. I saw panic in his eyes. "I have problems. Big problems." "What kind of problems?" I gambled. A lot. And I lost. I owe money to some very bad people, Mom. If I don't pay in 2 weeks. His voice broke. My son, my boy, was crying. How much do you owe? $400,000. My throat went dry. $400,000. A fortune. And Jessica? Jessica doesn't know anything. If she finds out, she'll leave me. She'll take the kids. Mom, you're the only one who can help me. For a moment, my mother's heart softened. I saw the 8-year-old boy who had lost his dog. The teenager who cried for his dead father. The young man who promised to take care of me when I was old. But then I remembered the bank. The forged documents. The lies. David, why didn't you just tell me from the beginning? Why make up that I was losing my mind? Because I knew you wouldn't give me that much money. You've always been so attached to your savings. Attached? I saved it for you. Everything I have is for you to be okay. Then give it to me now. His tone changed again. Desperation turned into demand. Not like this, David. Not with lies and forged papers. He stood up abruptly and started pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. Mom, you don't understand. These people don't forgive. If I don't pay, they'll hurt me. And then they'll go after Jessica. And my kids. Why did you bet so much? Because I thought I could win. I had a sure tip about some stocks. It was impossible to lose. But you lost. Yes, I lost. And now I need the money. I got up and went to him. I put my hands on his cheeks, like I used to when he was little and had nightmares. David, I'm going to help you. But with conditions. His eyes lit up. What are they? First, you're going to tell me the whole truth. Everything. Second, you're going to get professional help for your gambling problem. And third, you will never lie to me again. He nodded desperately. Yes, Mom. Anything you want. And fourth, you're going to give me back the keys to this house. I don't trust you anymore. His expression changed. What? You heard me. Give me the keys. Mom, that's absurd. I'm your son. A son I can no longer trust. He stood motionless, looking at me as if I were a stranger. Are you seriously taking my keys away over this? David, you spied on me. You forged documents. You said I was losing my mind. What would you do in my place? Slowly, he took the keys from his pocket and placed them on the table. The sound of metal on wood felt like a final judgment. I'll go to the bank with you tomorrow, I told him. I'll transfer you the money you need. But this never happens again. David nodded, but something in his eyes told me this wasn't over. I was right. The worst was yet to come. The next day, I kept my promise. We went to the bank together, and like a fool, I transferred $400,000 to David's account. Ashley looked at me with concern as she processed the transaction, but she didn't say anything. She just gently squeezed my hand when she gave me the receipt. David hugged me outside the bank. It was a hug that felt like a goodbye, though I didn't understand it at the time. Thank you, Mom. I promise this will never happen again. It better not, David. Will you come for dinner on Sunday? Jessica wants to make peace with you. I hesitated for a moment, but my mother's heart won over my logic. All right. But I want to see my grandkids. Of course. Emily and Paul have missed you so much. That was the first of many lies he would tell me in the following days. On Sunday, I arrived at their condo in Back Bay with a homemade chocolate cake, the favorite of Emily, my 12-year-old granddaughter. The house smelled of sautéed onions and spices, as if Jessica had really been cooking all morning. But when I walked in, the children barely looked at me. They were glued to their tablets, completely ignoring my presence. Emily? Paul? Aren't you going to say hello to Grandma? Emily looked up for a second. Hi, Grandma, she mumbled, and went back to her screen. Paul, who was 8, didn't even do that. The kids are a little tired, Jessica explained, coming out of the kitchen in a spotless apron. You know how Sundays are. But I knew it wasn't tiredness. It was indifference. My own grandchildren were treating me like an annoying guest. The meal was tense. David ate in silence, Jessica made superficial comments about the weather, and the children asked to be excused as soon as they finished their first plate. Can't you stay a little longer? I asked. I brought cake. We don't like cake, Emily said, without looking at me. But it's chocolate, your favorite. I don't like chocolate anymore. They went to their rooms, and I was left there, with my untouched cake and my breaking heart. Why don't they love me anymore? I asked David. Of course they love you, Mom. They're just at that difficult age. But Jessica looked at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Helen, the children have been hearing things lately, about you. What kind of things? Well, that you're a bit confused. That you say strange things sometimes. I froze. What strange things? David intervened quickly. Nothing important, Mom. Just that you sometimes repeat the same stories. All grandparents repeat stories. Yes, but you? Jessica hesitated. Sometimes you mix up names. You call Emily Catherine, like your sister who passed away. That was a lie. I had never confused my grandchildren with anyone. That's not true. Mom, don't get defensive, David said in that condescending voice I had started to hate. It's normal at your age. Normal? What's normal at my age? Well, you know, the forgetfulness, the confusion. I stood up from the table. I'm not confused. And I'm not forgetful. Helen, sit down, Jessica said. We're trying to help you. Help me with what? With your situation. What situation? David and Jessica looked at each other, as if they had rehearsed this conversation. Mom, we've been talking to a doctor. A specialist in older people. A geriatrician? Yes. And he says it's important for you to have supervision. For your safety. Supervision? For someone to keep an eye on you. To check on your medications, make sure you're eating well, that nothing happens to you. I understood where the conversation was going. And I suppose that someone would be you. We're your family, Mom. The same doctor who signed the fake papers? David turned red. They weren't fake. Just preemptive. Preemptive? Yes. For when you really need them. I left that house without tasting my own cake, with the certainty that I had lost not only my son but also my grandchildren. On the subway ride back, a young woman offered me her seat. I looked at my reflection in the window and for the first time, I saw what others saw, a lonely, tired, defeated old woman. That night, as I was preparing a solitary dinner, the phone rang. It was Emily, my granddaughter. Grandma? My heart skipped a beat. Finally, one of my grandchildren was calling me. Emily. How are you, sweetie? Grandma, Dad told me to tell you something. What is it, love? That we can't see you much anymore because Mom says you're sick in the head. I dropped the phone. Literally. It crashed onto the kitchen floor and the screen shattered. My own grandchildren believed I was crazy. The following days were a nightmare. David started calling me every day, supposedly to check in, but I knew it was to control me. Did you take your pills, Mom? Did you eat something nutritious today? Did you leave the house? Where did you go? Did you talk to any strangers? It was as if I were a little girl who needed constant supervision. But the worst came a week later. I was at the Star Market in my neighborhood, buying my usual groceries, when I ran into Sarah, my lifelong neighbor. Helen, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. I'm fine, Sarah. Just doing some shopping. Oh, Helen, I'm so sorry to hear what your son told me. What did my son tell you? That you're, forgetting things. That sometimes you don't recognize people. My mouth went dry. When did he tell you that? Last week. He came over to talk to my Bill. He said that if I ever found you confused or lost, I should call him immediately. Lost? Yes, that's sometimes seniors with, get disoriented and can't find their way home. David had been talking to my neighbors. Building a narrative where I was a demented old woman who couldn't take care of herself. Sarah, I'm perfectly fine. Of course, you are, dear, she said with that tone people use with the mentally ill. Of course, you are. I got home trembling with rage. David hadn't just stolen my money, he was destroying my reputation, my dignity, my place in the world. That night I called Mr. Herrera. I need to see you urgently. What happened, Helen? My son is telling everyone in the neighborhood that I'm crazy. Mr. Herrera was silent for a moment. Helen, that's slander. We can sue him. I don't want to sue him. I want something better. What do you want? I want to disappear. What do you mean? I want David to believe I have no money left. That I lost everything. I want to see what he does when he thinks I'm of no use to him anymore. Mr. Herrera laughed for the first time since I'd known him. Helen, that's diabolical. It's necessary. Are you sure? Completely sure. Then let's do it. And so, my revenge began. Mr. Herrera's plan was perfect. Over the next 2 weeks, we transferred all my money to accounts in Switzerland, under the name of a charitable foundation he managed. We left barely $5,000 in my Boston accounts. To anyone looking, it would seem that an old woman had lost all her savings in bad investments. We also prepared fake documents indicating that I had loaned large sums of money to people who never paid me back, and that I had fallen victim to phone scams. All very believable for a woman my age. Are you sure about this, Helen? Mr. Herrera asked as we signed the last papers. Once we start, there's no going back. I'm more sure of this than anything in my life. The first step was to call David, faking a panic. Son. I need you to come over right away. What's wrong, Mom? I was scammed. Over the phone. They stole all my money. There was a silence that lasted an eternity. What do you mean, all of it? A man called me saying he was from the bank, that there was a problem with my account. He asked for my passwords and I gave them to him. Mom, how much money? Everything, David. Everything I had. Another silence. I'm on my way. He arrived in 20 minutes, with Jessica. They both had faces like they were at a funeral, but not for me. For the money. Mom, explain exactly what happened, David said, pulling out a notepad as if he were a police officer. I told them the story we had prepared. I pretended to be confused, scared, like the vulnerable old woman they wanted me to be. And how much money was in that account? Jessica asked. Everything I had left. About 2.5 million. I saw David turn pale. His hands trembled as he wrote down the figure. Mom, why didn't you call me before giving out your passwords? I didn't think. The man sounded so official. He said my money was in danger if I didn't act fast. For God's sake, Mom. At your age, you should know those are scams. His tone changed completely. He was no longer the concerned son. He was a man furious that a fortune had slipped through his fingers. David, don't yell at her, Jessica said, but without conviction. Don't yell at her? She let herself be robbed of $2.5 million. Money that was practically ours. There it was. The naked truth. Money that was practically ours. Son, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring the money back. He stood up and started pacing my living room like a madman. Did you call the police? Jessica asked. Yes, but they said it's very difficult to recover money from these types of scams. And the bank? Them too. They said since I gave out the passwords voluntarily, there's not much they can do. David sat on my sofa with his head in his hands. I can't believe you could be so stupid. David. Jessica scolded. What? It's the truth. My mother is an idiot. I remained motionless, pretending to be devastated, but inside I was taking note of every word, every gesture, every expression of contempt. Well, Jessica said after a moment, what money do you have left? Very little. About $5,000 in another account. $5,000? David shot up. Is that it? That's it. And how are you going to live? I don't know. On my pension, I guess. Your pension is $800 a month, Mom. That's not even enough for basic expenses. I know. I waited for him to offer help. For him to tell me not to worry, that he would take care of me. That I was his mother and he would look after me. He said nothing. Neither did Jessica. They just sat there, silently calculating how my poverty affected them. Well, Jessica finally said, you'll have to sell the house. Sell the house? Of course. You can't maintain it on $800 a month. The property taxes, the heating, the electricity, the water, it's impossible. But this is my home. It was your home when you had money, David said coldly. Now it's a burden you can't afford. And where will I live? David and Jessica looked at each other. There are some very nice retirement homes for people your age, Jessica said. With your pension and what you get from selling the house, you can afford a room in one of them. A retirement home? Yes, Mom. It's the most sensible thing. You'll be cared for there, you won't have to worry about anything, and we can visit you on weekends. On weekends? As if it were a social obligation. But I don't want to go to a retirement home. Mom, you don't have a choice, David said. Unless, he paused. Unless what? Unless you have more money hidden somewhere. I looked him straight in the eye. I don't have any more money, David. What they stole was all of it. Are you sure? Why do you ask? Because you've always been very private about your finances. Maybe you have other accounts we don't know about. No, son. I only had that one account. He got up and started going through my papers on the kitchen table. What are you doing? Looking through your documents. To see if there's anything we're missing. David, those are my private papers. Mom, you don't have privacy anymore. You're a resourceful old woman who needs help. We have to check everything to see how we can help you. Help me. What an ugly word that sounded coming from his mouth. He checked every paper, every bank document, every statement. He even opened the drawers of my desk without asking. Where's the deed to the house? In the safe. Open it. Why? Because we need to see what this house is really worth. I opened the safe with trembling hands, faking nervousness. Inside were the deed, some personal documents, and the jewelry I had left. David took the deed and examined it like a professional appraiser. The house is worth about $400,000. With that, you can pay for a private facility for, let's say 15 years. And after 15 years? We'll see then. We'll see. As if he would still be worried about me in 15 years. Jessica approached the safe and saw my jewelry. Helen, is this jewelry valuable? Some of it. It was my mother's. You could sell it too. They're family heirlooms. Heirlooms don't pay the bills, David said. At that moment, I made the most important decision of my life. I stood up and looked at them both. All right. I'll do what you say. Really? David seemed surprised. Really? I'll sell the house, I'll move into a home, and you won't have to worry about me anymore. Mom, it's not that we don't want to worry, David, it's okay. I understand perfectly. I understood. I understood that to them, I had stopped being their mother and had become a burden. I understood that they only loved me when I had money. I understood that my value as a person was directly tied to the size of my bank account. Well, Jessica said, standing up, then we'll start looking at facilities this week. This week? Yes. There's no point in you staying here any longer. Without money, every day that passes is money lost on unnecessary expenses. And my grandchildren? Can they come say goodbye? David and Jessica looked at each other again. Helen, the kids are very busy with school. It's better if we visit you once you're settled in the home. Of course. Once I'm settled. They left that night without so much as a hug. David took the deed to the house, to speed up the process, and Jessica left me some brochures for retirement homes that she had brought in her purse. I was left alone in my house, surrounded by brochures promoting the best chapter of your life and comprehensive care for seniors, feeling like an old piece of furniture being thrown out to make space. But for the first time in months, I smiled. Because the next day, I was going to do something that would change everything. Something David never saw coming. The next day, at 9 a.m. sharp, I called David. Son, I need you to come over. There's something important I have to tell you. Mom, I'm at work. Can't it wait? No. It's about the house. And the money. He arrived in 30 minutes. This time he came alone. Jessica must have been at a spa, spending the money he had saved from the clutches of gamblers. What is it now, Mom? I had him sit on the living room sofa. I sat across from him, in my father's armchair, the one from which I always made the family's important decisions. David, before you sell the house and take me to a home, there's something you need to know. What is it? About the money that was stolen from me. What about it? It wasn't stolen. He froze, as if he hadn't understood what I had just said. What do you mean it wasn't stolen? There was no phone scam, David. I transferred that money. You transferred it? Where? To secure accounts. In other banks. Under other names. His face changed color. From white to red, then to a shade of purple that scared me. Are you telling me you faked being robbed? Exactly. Why? I stood up and went to my desk. I took out a folder I had prepared the night before. Because I wanted to see what you would do when you thought I had no money. I showed him the documents, bank statements with the real transactions, transfers to Switzerland, investments I had made without his knowledge. It turns out that when you thought I was poor, you wanted to put me in a home. When you thought I was of no more use to you, you decided to get rid of me like an old dog. David shot up, trembling with rage. Are you crazy? How could you do this to me? Do what to you, David? Lie to you? Like you lied to me at the bank? Like you forged documents saying I was demented? That was different. Different how? I was doing it for your own good. For my own good? Or for the $400,000 you needed to pay off your gambling debts? He fell silent. He knew I had him trapped. How much money do you really have? He asked, in a voice I didn't recognize. Much more than you can imagine. How much? That's no longer your concern. Of course it's my concern. I'm your son. That money belongs to me. Belongs to you? Why? Because I'm your heir. You were my heir. Not anymore. I pulled another paper from the folder. A copy of the new will I had made with Mr. Herrera. This is my current will. You can read it if you like. He took it with trembling hands and read in silence. I watched his eyes move across the lines, how his breathing quickened. $50,000? That's all you're leaving me? It's more than you deserve. And the rest? To charities. Foundations that help the elderly abandoned by their families. He threw the paper on the floor. You can't do this. I can and I did. I'm going to contest this will. Go ahead. It's completely legal. Signed before a notary, with witnesses, including a psychological evaluation certifying that I am of sound mind. David started pacing the room like a caged animal. Mom, please. We can fix this. I know you're hurt, but, hurt? David, I'm not hurt. I'm disappointed. Deeply disappointed. Tell me what you want. Anything. What I want, you can no longer give me. What is it? For you to love me unconditionally. For you to respect me. For you to treat me like your mother, not a bank account. I do love you, Mom. No, David. You love my money. When you thought I didn't have any, you wanted to throw me in a home like trash. He sat on the sofa and, for the first time in years, I saw him truly cry. Mom, I swear that wasn't my intention. What was it then? To protect you. Protecting me in a home where you'd visit on weekends? Yes, no. I don't know. And telling the whole neighborhood I'm crazy? That was for what, David? So people would understand why you had to go into a home. And my grandchildren? Did you also tell them their grandmother is crazy so they would understand why they wouldn't see me anymore? He didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. David, Emily called me last night. He looked up. What? Your daughter called me. Do you know what she told me? Mom, she told me that her dad had explained that Grandma Helen had gotten very old and confused, and that it was better if she didn't see me anymore because I might scare her. David covered his face with his hands. Did you really say that to a 12-year-old girl? I didn't want her to see you like that. Like what? Sick. But I'm not sick. You made it up. I thought it would be easier for everyone. Easier for whom, David? For you? So that when you put me in a home, the kids wouldn't ask why? He stood up and came towards me. Mom, give me another chance. Please. No, I'll do whatever you want. It's too late. It can't be too late. I'm your son. You're the man who forged documents to rob me. You're the man who told my grandchildren I'm crazy. You're the man who wanted to throw me in a home when he thought I was poor. But I can change. David, you're 45 years old. If you haven't learned to love your mother unconditionally by now, you never will. Mom, please, get out of my house. What? Get out. Now. I'm not leaving. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'll call the police and show them the forged documents you used at the bank. He froze. You do that? David, there's nothing I wouldn't do to protect myself from you now. He headed for the door, but before leaving, he turned back. And Jessica? Does she know about this too? Jessica will know whatever you tell her. But I'll warn you of one thing, if she comes to my house to confront or insult me, I'll report her too. I have recordings of everything you've both said to me. Recordings? Yes. My phone has been recording every conversation we've had since you forged those documents. It was a lie, but David didn't know that. You're a witch. I'm a woman who learned to defend herself. And my kids? Are you going to keep them away from me too? Your children are not my responsibility, David. They're yours. But I assure you that if they ever come to see me of their own free will, when they're adults, I will tell them the whole truth. What truth? That their father tried to rob his own mother. That he lied to them about my mental state. That when he thought I was poor, he wanted to get rid of me. They won't believe you. I have documents, David. I have proof of everything. He slammed the door on his way out, making the whole house shake. I was left alone in my living room, surrounded by a silence that, for the first time in months, didn't scare me. It was the silence of freedom. That night, I slept for 8 straight hours for the first time in years. The first days after kicking David out of my house were strange. It was like waking up from a long nightmare and not knowing if what I was seeing was real or just another dream. I woke up on Wednesday morning without the knot in my stomach that had been my companion for months. There was no phone ringing with invasive questions. No voices telling me what to do with my money, my house, my life. For the first time in years, silence was my friend. I had a peaceful breakfast in my kitchen, watching Mrs. Chen from the 3rd floor water her plants on the balcony. It was such a normal, peaceful scene, I almost started to cry. When had I lost the ability to enjoy the simple things? At 10 in the morning, I called Mr. Herrera. How are you feeling, Helen? Free. And David? He hasn't called again. I think he finally understood. And what are you going to do now? It was a question I hadn't asked myself in decades. What was I going to do? For 40 years, everything I did was for others, for Michael, for David, for the grandkids. But now, for the first time in my adult life, I could do whatever I wanted. I'm going to live. That afternoon I went to the Prudential Center, something I hadn't done since before the pandemic. I bought new clothes, a blue dress that made me look younger, comfortable but elegant shoes, a red coat that made me want to smile every time I saw myself in the mirror. The saleswoman, a girl of about 25, helped me choose. Ma'am, is this for a special occasion? Yes, I told her. For my new life. She looked at me strangely but smiled. Well, you look beautiful. When I got home with my shopping bags, I felt like a teenager who had just spent her birthday money. It had been years since I bought something just because I liked it, without thinking if it was sensible or age-appropriate. On Friday, I did something I had been putting off for 20 years. I called Catherine Jones, my best friend from my youth. Catherine and I had been inseparable until I married Michael. Then, between children, jobs, and family responsibilities, we drifted apart. She had moved to San Francisco when her husband found a job there, and although we wrote to each other at Christmas, we hadn't really talked in a decade. Helen? Oh my God. Is that really you? It's me, Catherine. I can't believe it. I was just thinking about you yesterday. How are you? Free, I said again, the word that had become my new definition. I told her everything. Well, not everything. I didn't tell her about the hidden money, but I did tell her about David, about the betrayal, about how I had decided to make a clean break. Helen, I can't believe you had the courage to do that. Courage? Yes. I could never have kicked my children out, no matter what they did. Catherine, there's a difference between being a mother and being a doormat. You're right. You were always the brave one. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about her life in San Francisco, about her grandchildren who visited her every weekend, about the book club she had joined, about the painting classes she had started taking. "Helen, why don't you come visit me? The weather is beautiful here, and I have a guest room I never use." The idea excited me so much I couldn't sleep that night. When was the last time I had traveled? When had I gone somewhere just because I wanted to go? On Monday, I went to a travel agency on Boylston Street. It was a small place, run by a woman my age named Hope. "I want to go to San Francisco," I told her. "When?" "This week." "This week? So soon?" "Ma'am, I've spent the last 10 years putting things off. I don't want to postpone another day." Hope smiled. "You know what? I like your attitude. Let's find you the trip of a lifetime." As we were arranging the trip, she asked if I was going alone. "Completely alone. And that doesn't scare you?" "On the contrary. It's what excites me the most. I bought a first-class plane ticket from Boston to San Francisco. Because I could afford it and because I deserved it." On Tuesday, while I was packing my new suitcase, the phone rang. For a moment I feared it was David, but it was Emily, my granddaughter. "Grandma?" "Hello, sweetie." "Grandma, Dad said you're not sick anymore." "I was never sick, Emily." "Why did he say you were?" It was a difficult question to answer. How do you explain to a 12-year-old girl that her father lies to get what he wants? Sometimes adults say things that aren't true when they're confused or scared. Was Dad scared? "I think so." "Of what?" "Of losing me. But he was going to put you in a home." So Emily knew more than I thought. "Emily, did you want me to go to a home?" "No. I wanted you to stay in your house. I always loved coming to see you." "You like coming to see me?" "Of course. You make the best French toast in the world, and you always let me help you in the kitchen. Mom never lets me cook. Do you want to come over this weekend?" "Really? Won't Dad get mad?" "You leave that to me." "Yes, Grandma. I want to come." After hanging up, I realized that all was not lost. Emily was still my granddaughter, no matter what David had done. And maybe, in time, Paul would also want to know the real grandmother, not the demented version his father had invented. On Wednesday morning, while I was waiting for the taxi to take me to Logan Airport, my neighbor Sarah saw me with the suitcase. "Are you going on a trip, Helen?" "Yes, to San Francisco. To visit a friend." "That's wonderful. I'm happy to see you looking so radiant." "Radiant?" "Yes. You look different. Younger." "I feel younger." "And your son? Isn't he worried about you traveling alone?" "My son no longer decides what I can or cannot do." Sarah looked at me with a mixture of respect and admiration. "Helen, I wish I had your courage." "Sarah, courage isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you decide to use or not." On the plane, as I watched the country pass below me, I thought about all the things I had stopped doing out of fear, out of habit, out of the false idea that women my age should behave in a certain way. I had stopped buying nice clothes because, what for, at my age? I had stopped traveling because, it's too complicated to go alone. I had stopped making plans because, I'm too old for that. I had stopped dreaming because, dreams are for the young. But sitting on that plane, watching the world move beneath me, I realized I had been living as if I were already dead. Catherine was waiting for me at SFO. I hadn't seen her in person in 15 years, but I recognized her immediately. Her hair was completely white, but her eyes were still the same, full of life and mischief. "Helen, you look exactly the same." We hugged like the teenagers we had been 50 years ago. "Catherine, you look beautiful too." "Liar. I'm old and fat, but happy. Happy is what counts." She took me to her apartment in the Mission District. It was small but full of light, with plants in every window and books stacked on every surface. "Do you know what we're going to do tonight?" she asked while making coffee. "What?" "We're going out. There's a tango bar in the neighborhood where a lot of people our age go. I go every Friday." "Catherine, I don't know how to dance tango." "And what does that matter? You learn. You can learn anything when you want to learn." That night, for the first time in decades, I danced. Not very well, it's true, but I danced. An Argentinian man in his 70s taught me the basic steps, and although I stepped on my own feet more than once, I laughed like I hadn't laughed in years. "You know what?" Catherine told me as we walked back to her place under the San Francisco lights. "You look 20 years younger than when you arrived this morning." "I feel 20 years younger." "So now what, Helen? What are you going to do with your new life?" I looked at the stars shining over the city. "Everything I didn't do before." "Like what?" "Travel. Learn new things. Meet people. Help other women who are going through what I went through." "Help how?" "I don't know yet. But something will come to me." And as we walked through those unfamiliar streets, feeling like the explorer I always wanted to be, I knew my life hadn't ended when I kicked David out of my house. On the contrary. It had just begun. 6 months after kicking David out of my house, I'm sitting on the balcony of my new apartment in Sausalito, watching the bay as I write these lines. Yes, I moved to Northern California, to this beautiful city where the air smells of salt and the seagulls wake me each morning with their cries of freedom. I made the decision to move after that trip to San Francisco. Catherine was right, when you decide to truly live, anything becomes possible. With part of the money David never knew I had, I bought the small 2-bedroom condo 100 yards from the water's edge in Sausalito. Here, nobody knows me as David's mother or the lady who got scammed. Here, I'm simply Helen, a 73-year-old woman who decided to start over. And how different life feels when you live it for yourself. On Mondays, I take painting classes at the local community arts center. It turns out I have a certain talent for seascapes. Who would have guessed? On Wednesdays, I attend a book club where we discuss novels I never thought I'd understand. On Fridays, I go hiking in the Marin Headlands with a group of walkers my age who have adopted me as if they've known me forever. But what fulfills me the most is what I do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I volunteer at the Valiant Women Foundation, an organization that helps older women who have been victims of financial abuse by their families. Yes, it exists. And it's more common than I ever imagined. I founded it myself with the money David thought was lost forever. Mr. Herrera helped me with all the legal paperwork, and now we have offices in Boston, San Francisco, and here in Sausalito. Every week, women come to me with stories that seem like carbon copies of my own, sons who manipulate them, grandchildren who ignore them, families who see them as walking ATMs. Yesterday, a woman named Dolores, a 68-year-old from Oakland, came to see me. Her story broke my heart and filled me with rage at the same time. Helen, my son took my house, telling me it was for my own good. He convinced me to sign a paper I thought was for insurance, but it was a deed of gift. Now I live in a room he rents to me for $300 a month, in my own house. I held her hand as she cried. Dolores, you'll find help here. We have lawyers, therapists, and women who have been through the same thing you have. Can something really be done? It can, Dolores. It always can. Because that's the most important lesson I've learned, you always can. You can always reclaim your dignity, you can always start over, you can always choose respect over the fear of loneliness. In these 6 months, David has called me exactly 3 times. The first time was 2 weeks after our confrontation. Jessica had found out about his gambling debts and had kicked him out of the house. He called me crying, begging me to help him with the rent for an apartment. Mom, Jessica took the kids. She won't let me see them. I'm staying at a friend's place, but I can't stay there forever. And what do you want me to do? Lend me some money. Just until I fix things with Jessica. David, you yourself said my money was practically yours. Well, the money that was practically yours, I gave to charity. Please, Mom. You can't leave me on the street. You were going to leave me in a retirement home. That was different. No, David. It was exactly the same. I hung up. The second call was on Christmas. He phoned from some bar, drunk, crying. Mom, the kids asked about you. Emily wants to see you. Emily does see me. She comes to visit 1 weekend a month. What? When? Since October. She takes a flight from Boston. She's a very brave girl. And you didn't tell me? Why should I? You're not my keeper, David. I'm her father. And she's 18. She can decide for herself who she wants to see. It was a lie. Emily was 12, but David was so drunk he didn't notice the error. Mom, I miss you. No, David. You miss my money. That's not true. Then come visit me. Without talking about money. Just to talk to me. Silence. It's just. Sausalito is so far away. It's not too far for Emily. He hung up again. The third call was a month ago. This time he sounded different. More sober, sadder. Mom, I went to therapy. I'm glad to hear that. The therapist says I have serious issues. That I've lived my whole life feeling entitled to things I don't deserve. And what do you think? I think he's right. And I want to apologize. I'm listening. I'm sorry for the fake documents. I'm sorry for saying you were losing your mind. I'm sorry for wanting to put you in a home. I'm sorry for everything. I let him speak. When he finished, I asked, David, do you think those words fix everything? No, Mom. But I hope it's a start. A start to what? To getting my mother back. David, your mother is still here. But she's no longer the same woman who let herself be walked all over. I know. Do you really know? Yes. And I understand if you don't forgive me. It's not that I don't forgive you, David. It's that I don't need you anymore. They were the hardest words I've ever said in my life, but also the most honest. Will I never be able to win you back? Son, you can come here whenever you want. You can call me whenever you want. You can write to me whenever you want. But I am not taking another step toward you. Why? Because for 40 years, I took all the steps. Now it's your turn to prove you've really changed. He hasn't called since. Emily, on the other hand, visits me religiously every other weekend. She flies from Boston like a grown-up, arrives here on Friday night, and leaves on Sunday. We cook together, walk along the water, go to the movies, and talk about books and life. Grandma, don't you miss Dad? I miss the dad I thought he was. I don't miss the man he turned out to be. Do you think things will ever be okay again? Emily, I've learned that family isn't just about blood. Family is the people who treat you with love and respect. Do I treat you with love and respect? You are my real family. Paul doesn't come yet. David has convinced him that I'm the bad guy in the story. But Emily says he's starting to ask questions. Maybe one day he'll also want to find out his own version of the truth. Yesterday, while I was painting a sunset over the Pacific, I got a call from Ashley, the bank teller who warned me about David's attempts. Mrs. Miller, I'm calling to tell you something. Do you remember my colleague, Andrea? No, I don't think so. A young woman who worked at the counter. Well, it turns out her mother-in-law is going through something similar to what happened to you. Her brother-in-law wants her to sign papers to protect her from scams. And what can I do? Could you talk to her? I told her your story, and she wants to meet you. Of course, I said yes. Because this is my mission now, to help other women discover that they have the right to live with dignity, regardless of their age. Today is Sunday. Emily will be here in an hour. We've planned to drive up to Hawk Hill for the view and then have dinner at a seafood place on the pier. I am 73 years old, with more money than I could ever spend in the rest of my life, a granddaughter who adores me unconditionally, and the peace of knowing that I finally learned to value myself. Do you know what the most ironic part of all this is? David thought he had taken everything from me when he tried to rob me. But in the end, what he did was give me my freedom. Because when you lose the fear of being alone, you stop accepting anything just to avoid it. When you stop desperately needing the love of others, you start receiving the love you truly deserve. When you stop giving infinite second chances, people learn that the first chance is golden. And when you stop living for others, you finally start to live. To all the women listening to me, especially those who feel used, manipulated, or taken for granted by their own families, I want to say something: you are worth more than you think. Your love should not be an ATM. Your wisdom should not be ignored. Your age should not be an excuse for others to control you. It's never too late to say enough. It's never too late to demand respect. And it is never, ever too late to start over. Have you ever experienced something similar to what happened to me? Do you know someone who has been manipulated or used by their own family? Tell me about it in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Because maybe there's someone else out there who needs to hear that they can be free, that they can choose their own dignity, and that it's never too late to live the life they truly deserve.